All right, so for a little bit more deep dive perspective into WrestleMania 30, I have my friend Brian here, who me, Brian, and a bunch of friends all went to New Orleans for WrestleMania 30. And again, I just want to talk about a little bit more about the perspective of what it to be inside that stadium that night. Brian, thank you so much for joining me here. How are you feeling tonight?
What's going on, Money Mike? Yeah, feeling pretty good, and I'm feeling a little bit younger since we're talking about WrestleMania 30 from 10 years ago. I'm feeling a little bit younger tonight. But yeah, man, I'm excited for WrestleMania 40 this weekend, and can't wait and whatnot. But yeah, let's talk a little bit of WrestleMania 30 from 10 years ago.
Yeah, so we were all there in New Orleans that night, and besides WrestleMania, do you have any like fond memories of like New Orleans or anything about the trip that you would like to share?
Yeah. No, it was New Orleans is a cool place. I definitely would like to go back. One story that's actually pretty funny. I don't know if you knew this or not, but Adam and I we decided that one night we were going to go to like the French Quarter and we ate. He knows the name of the restaurant. I don't. I can't remember, but I think it was after that we went down Bourbon Street, and you know how Bourbon Street can be a little wild. Well, this woman outside of a bar approaches us, and she was like, "Come here, young man." And Adam had on his hat, and I think I did too. And next thing you know, like she's giving us a shot, and we're almost like basically kissing this lady, like and it's this little tube. I mean, maybe like 2 inches tall, if that. Of like it was some sort of liquor, but it was mixed with it. Even it tastes like candy. And then she's like, "Oh, that'll be $20 from each of you." And we're like, what?" So that's kind of one funny story that I have from New Orleans and that weekend. So I don't know if I've ever told y'all that. We may have, but it's been a while.
That's
But
always no, I've never heard that story before. I mean, it sounds like when you're on the Vegas Strip, like when you go in Las Vegas, it's like you see the Vegas showgirls, and
oh
I've
yeah,
always heard stories of people like they get pictures, and then after the picture they'll be like, "Yeah, that's $20,"
yeah, I've heard
But
about.
yeah, I've
I've
never
heard
heard
it.
that story before.
Yeah. It's a little wild, but yeah, I've heard that about Vegas
Adam
too.
never even said about it either. I don't recall.
Yeah, I hadn't even actually thought about that for a while, so that's kind of glad you asked me that.
But
But
I mean, yeah, New Orleans was a nice city. Oh man, yeah. Well, I mean, it was
yeah,
10 years ago, and the fact that it was 10 years ago is kind of crazy. Almost kind
yeah,
of
it is.
crazy when you think about like just going back to you know like how much has changed in pro wrestling in 10 years since WrestleMania 30.
Oh yeah, I mean you're absolutely right. I think wrestling's got is the hottest it has been in a long time. The last couple years, definitely. So it's been hot lately. Obviously, AEW coming around in 2019. So it's a lot has changed in wrestling. Yeah, like I said, it's as good as it's been from what I remember back in the early 2000s. What it is today.
Yeah, I mean, I remember sharing a picture from SmackDown recently here in Charlotte, where fans were saying through the dark match, and I would say before the pandemic and stuff, people would either leave during the show or they would leave right after the show. But now, like you said, it's the hottest it's ever been, probably ever, probably even more so than the Attitude Era,
Yeah,
and now fans are just staying until like the end of the show, until end of the dark matches. Like that's never I've never seen that before.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, definitely. And I mean, even AEW is pretty hot. Obviously, maybe not as much as WWE, but there's just so many great wrestlers, great talent, great storylines. It goes on and on. But it's definitely a good time to be a wrestling fan. That is for sure. That's not a prediction. That's a spoiler.
Yes, it is, and that's oh man. That's the funny thing. You mentioned AEW. Like Cody Rhodes was still in WWE at the time. He hadn't been released yet.
That's right.
Because he went on that independent run after his release. Then he met the Bucks, Kenny Omega. They had the All In show in 2018. So Cody. So again, like AEW wasn't even like even thought of yet. The concept of it wasn't even thought of. And when you look back at the WrestleMania 30 card and how many of the talent that were on the WrestleMania 30 card are actually now in AEW.
Yeah, that is true. Yeah. I mean, I know Daniel Bryan and I mean there's others too, but obviously. So yeah, there's quite a few. I looked at the card today, but I have to look at it again, remember all the matches, but yeah.
And as I was saying before, so like this was my first in-person WrestleMania. You've been to one WrestleMania before,
Yeah.
and I think for me, obviously you can't talk WrestleMania 30 without talking about the streak being broken. Like for me, it was the first WrestleMania, and the streak is broken on my first WrestleMania. Like do you remember how you felt when that Brock Lesnar hit that third F5? I mean, you had to assume Undertaker was kicking out, right? I mean,
Yeah.
he had to,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, I did. I did. And when that happened, I thought that it was like a fast count by the ref or something. And like, well, I don't even know if the bell rang. Like, I don't even know if it did. And we kind of were like, is the match over? Like, what's happening? And everybody was just, quiet. And even when they announced that Brock Lesnar had beaten the Undertaker, we were just in shock. I mean, you could hear a pin drop in the. It's not the Silver Dome, by the way, Hulk Hogan. It's the Superdome. But you could hear a pin drop in the Superdome. It was so quiet. Yeah, it was so quiet. And I don't know about you, but that was probably the biggest upset, that I've ever witnessed, it's in terms of professional wrestling. It was, yeah, that by far the biggest. And Brock Lesnar did what he said he was going to do: eat, sleep, conquer the streak.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, like, you could hear a pin drop, and I just remember I still remember the feeling because for me, because you don't expect it, and especially like I said, for me it was my first WrestleMania, so like
Yeah,
for me I'm like, did I really just see the streak end of my first live WrestleMania? Like it took a while to sink in, and the aura around that stadium, like after it happened, like I don't think nobody knew how to process it. Nobody knew, whether it was real or not. Like you said,
yeah,
like people were speculating before he mess up. Was it a fast count? Like people did not want to believe it, but being inside the stadium, like you could just tell, like just this dark cloud just kind of came over everything, and the energy was sucked right out of the stadium.
it was just, it was very surreal. I mean, very surreal moment. And I remember seeing, it's all over. I think after us, because that was the first pay per view that was on the WWE network, by the way. Fun fact for everybody. That was the first one. And I remember like after that, it showed that guy's face in the first row, and he was like, his
Yes,
eyes were popping out of his head. So
I
it
remember
was
that.
just, and that's kind of how we all felt inside the Superdome that night. And also, I was thinking about this. You were sitting in a different spot than us, right? You weren't sitting where we were, right?
No, we were all together.
Oh, we were. Okay. I was
We
thinking y'all
were
sat,
yeah, we were all together.
okay. I was thinking y'all sat somewhere else for some reason. But I will say, like, it was one of the craziest things I've ever seen in person. I mean, it's up there with, we just went to went to Sting's final match, AEW Revolution, and that Darby Allin spot was, I mean, it wasn't the same as The Undertaker, but it was just like, wow, what did we just see? And that's kind of like what it was with The Undertaker. Like, what did we just witness? Was that real? And obviously, turns out that it was. And The Undertaker streak ended that night in the Bayou, New Orleans, Louisiana. It's crazy.
You know, because for a while after the show, like Paul Heyman, anytime he mentioned that Brock beat the streak, he would get booed tremendously because I think people were still upset that the Undertaker streak was actually broken. The fans did not want to see it. They wanted him to retire with the perfect record.
Yeah. Yeah, they did. Yeah. Yeah. People didn't like that. You know, it wasn't the most popular thing, but we know WWE doesn't always do what the most popular thing is, and which is, you know, I can appreciate that. They don't just give the fans always what they want, you know, which is part of it. It's part of it.
Yeah, that's funny you bring that up because other part of WrestleMania 30, and you can almost kind of tie it together with what we're seeing with Cody Rhodes now. But the fans 10 years ago, they they would not accept anything less than Daniel Bryan being in the main event of WrestleMania 30. There was the whole yes movement,
Oh yeah.
and he had that opening match with H. And you kind of see the comparisons now, 10 years later, where
Oh yeah.
they try to change everything to Rock versus Roman, and the fans were like, "No, we want Cody to finish his story." So you kind of see the parallels 10 years later with from Daniel Bryan to now Cody Rhodes.
Yeah, that's actually really good. That's a really good parallel. I mean, I hadn't really thought about that, but I mean, I knew he fought two matches that night, Daniel Bryan, and now obviously Cody's going to have to go through two matches. You know, a little bit different setup because I think Daniel Bryan had to win to be in the main event against Randy Orton and Batista. So a little different, but very similar
Yep.
parallels. You know, and he kind of finished his story, and so we'll find out in a couple of nights if Cody Rhodes is going to finish his, or is he not? Or is the Roman Empire going to continue after this Sunday? We'll find out.
Absolutely. You know, to close out from WrestleMania 30, obviously, like we said, so much has changed in pro wrestling since then. You have guys that were in on the WrestleMania match card that are no longer there. You have like Edge who was retired.
Yeah,
Now he's in AEW. With his 10 time frame, we thought he was retired. He had his comeback in the Royal Rumble a couple years ago, and really, again, it really does speak volumes, like how much things can change in pro wrestling. Like looking at the match card for WrestleMania 30 and just seeing the talent, the guys that are no longer in WWE,
yeah,
that were on that card, and it's going to be interesting to see, 10 years from now when we're getting ready for WrestleMania 50 to see even how much more pro wrestling has changed. By the time we get to 2030.
yeah, yeah. I mean, yeah, it will be interesting, to see what happens, from now until WrestleMania 50. Obviously, like you said, a lot changed between, WrestleMania 30 and now. I mean, wrestling, it was a good time back then, but I feel like wrestling became a little bit stale around 2010 or so. And then it started getting hot again, maybe 2018,
Mhm.
19, right when AEW started, it started to get picked back up. And now, now it's obviously, you know, hot as it's ever been. It is sizzling right now in the wrestling world. So, and it's fun to be a fan.
Absolutely. But Brian, again, thank you so much for joining me tonight. Looking back at WrestleMania 30, talking a little bit about WrestleMania 40. And hopefully, we get to hang out soon again, and we can talk more about this in person.
Yeah, no, yeah. Thanks for having me on, Money Mike. Anytime you want me to come on, I'm happy. I love doing videos, love talking about wrestling, and it was fun tonight going down memory lane with you and talking about WrestleMania 30. And here we are on the doorstep of the grandest stage of them all again, 10 years later, WrestleMania 40. So, but yeah, thanks for having me on the show, Money Mike, and I'd be happy to come back anytime. Anytime you ask me, next time I may charge you though, so just let you know.